Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. I hope you are well. Let me just make sure that this is working across the board. Those of you in Zoom, thank you for joining us. Welcome. Tonight is all about Pitch Perfect. And don't worry, I'm not going to start singing with Anna Kendrick, some sort of, a cappella song or anything like that. But I just want to make sure that this is working. So just bear with me for 2 seconds. On Zoom, if you could drop in the chat that you can see the presentation page and that you can see me. If somebody could drop that in the chat, that would be really helpful. I'm just going to make sure it's working across all the other platforms. So there you go. You can see both. Perfect. Okie dokie then. So let's dive into it. So Pitch Perfect. Here we go. Let's get rid of that just in case that's recording. I believe this is working. So hello and welcome to week 3 in our 13-week Airbnb Made Simple program. I am Matt Dare Edwards. I am the founder, director, whatever title you want to give me, of Dare Property in general and the Airbnb Made Simple and the Rent-to-Rent Property University program. I have been in property for about 5 years, just over 5 years. We've had a rent-to-rent portfolio for a very long time, pretty much since the start, and we've been educating and helping people through this, through the world of rent-to-rent, for probably close to about 1.5 to 2 years, and it's been extremely beneficial, if that makes sense. It's nice to be able to help people, particularly at this time when the industry is slightly changing. We're seeing different rules and regulations come in. There's, oversaturation in some areas and issues in others. So it's really nice to be able to help people like you. This is obviously a free 13-week series. This is what we're trying to help you, give you the tools and knowledge to maybe try and get your businesses started if you've already got businesses, to help push you along and grow them. So what you will learn this evening. So by the end of this session, and we're going to try and keep it down to 45 minutes or under, just to keep you guys engaged. If you have any questions along the way, please drop them in the chat. If you're on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, drop them in the chat. If we don't get to them during the session, I will answer them afterwards. But you will learn how to craft the perfect conversation with your landlords and agents, how to overcome common objections, because look, there's only a handful of objections and we hear them all day, every day. How to build trust, to reassure them of the guarantees and the legal concerns and all of that good stuff, and how to position yourself as a pro, even if you are just starting out. Because trust me, apologies, I don't know what happened then. One of the things that you will learn is that even as a newbie, there are sometimes, sorry, I've just got one of the team messaging me then. If everybody in the group could just jump on mute, that would be really, really beneficial, please. Thank you very much. Or if I can do it here. Yeah, there we go. Mute. There we go. So yeah, even when you're just starting out, there's ways that you can position yourself to, come across as professional, but without going over the top. And one of the things I really want to dive down on this evening is scripts, and why we should not be using scripts when we're dealing with agents and landlords. Okay. So without further ado, let's dive into the next session. Is that the next one? Next slide. There we go. Okay, so the biggest problems. So why so many agents and landlords overlook rent to rent? Now, yes, a lot of them don't know what it is, right? That's more to do when you're dealing with landlords. They just simply don't know what company let means. They don't know what you're trying to do with this property, okay? And it's your job as the one who's educated, as the professional here, to educate them, okay, in the right way. They don't understand how it can actually benefit them. Countless times you see that people just think, and even people who want to get into rent, they're like, well, why would the landlord go for that? It's all in my favor. Like, why would the landlord do it? There are very strong benefits to landlords, and it's not always the ones that you think and that you immediately go to. And they quite common. Landlords and agents think that you're just going to have a party house and it's going to be absolutely trashed and your neighbors are going to have problems and it's going to be an absolute nightmare. But that's where we're here. Over the next probably 40 minutes, we're going to help you get through this, okay? And then from your point of view, this is where you're there to help the agent, help the landlord understand the process, understand what's going on. Okay, so the most common objections, okay, that you will find, particularly when you ring an agent, okay, this top one, is it's company policy, okay? Now, I guarantee you, if you run, 10 or 20 agents, you would have heard that line, okay? Now, this is quite often the case, and this is what happens when you start trying to get deals from the larger agents, the more national agents. That's when you have had people the sort of director level have said, right, as a business, we do not do company lets. Now, it is most of the time still down to that branch manager to make the decision. As long as they've got the insurance in place to cover it, they can still make the decision. And that does happen every now and then, right? You do find agents that historically, as a brand, a nationwide brand, do not do company lets, that will then accept it. Okay, so don't always take that as never speak to them again, never approach them again. It's one of those things that when they come in, when a lettings agent comes into the business, they get trained, they get educated by their their boss, their training manager, whatever it may be. They just called right told that company lets, that's it, it's company policy, they don't do it. The other one you'll get from an agent is that our landlords won't do it. Now, that's not always the case. How many landlords do they actually have? Have they even asked the question? Right? There's so many different things that go on here. That is, again, just a line that they they give you, excuse me for that, to just get you off the phone. That's as simply as it is, right? They just want to get rid of you, get you off the phone as quick as they can to go back to doing what they normally do. We've done it before and don't want the hassle. Now, that one has a lot of truth behind it, okay? If you get that from an agent, it quite often can be true. And the problem with this is that rent to rent as a whole, it's not a new strategy as much as people will want to think it's a new strategy or anything like that. It is not a new strategy. And so it's been it's been around a long time, and a lot of people have done it extremely badly. So yes, there will be agents out there or even landlords out there that have done it and they've had a very bad experience and they have absolutely no intention of doing it again. That does happen, right? And to be quite frank, there is usually no real way of immediately changing their mind. The only thing you can do with them is to build a rapport, build a relationship over time, so that in 3-6 months time, they've really got to know you, they really understand who you are, what you do, and how you operate. Then they might start opening up, going, okay, yeah, we might do some work with you. No thanks, it's not for us. That kind of ties in with the others. That's something that you'll get quite often. And then let me take some details and we'll email you. 9 times out of 10, that is just a way to get you off the phone. Every now and then, however, it would lead somewhere, right? If that was to happen, I'd normally say, right, no problem. Could I get your email address as well? Excuse me. And I'll drop you an email, just a follow-up email, just with a bit of information about what we do and how we operate, just so we can propose how we operate to you as a business, right? And at least that way, it's not just them taking your phone number and your email address. I can guarantee you, if they take your email address and say, yeah, if anything comes through, we'll let you know, they will never let you know, right? You just go into a database, which probably doesn't even have the ability to track whether you want company lets or standard lets. And then all that will happen is in about 6 to 12 months' time, you'll get a call from somebody in the office saying, hey, you were interested in 2-bed properties in Liverpool. Are you still looking for a property, or have you managed to secure one? That's what will happen. 9 times out of 10, that's what will happen. Okay, so don't come off the phone thinking, oh yeah, they've taken my details, I don't need to contact them again because they'll get in touch with me. It won't. Make sure you are continuously contacting these agents. Okay, so one of the let me just jump. One of the bits that you need to be aware of, right, and this is the main bulk of the session this evening. Okay, is this one slide, but it's being yourself. Okay, now we have quite a lot of agent friends. Okay, who we bring them onto our weekly calls with our mentees. We interact with them. I had a good 15-20 minute conversation with one of them this morning about absolutely nothing to do with property. So we know firsthand from them that agents can tell within the first few seconds if you are reading off a script, if you are trying to be a relocation agent, if you are trying to be too robotic, too scripted. It comes across, right? Very much like these webinars sometimes do that you see, and it's all scripted. You can see that they know exactly what words to say in exactly the right order. I do not do that, as you can probably tell this evening. We do not script any of this. Okay, we have slides and then we embellish them. But that's what you need to do when you're on the phone with agents, right? They need to believe in you. They're not doing the deal with your company name. They're not doing the deal with your company logo, with any of that. None of that makes a difference right at the start. What makes the difference is you. So you need to portray yourself in the best possible way. And that doesn't mean all professional, fancy words or any of that, right? Go in there, just be completely yourself and be upfront. One of the most of the time that I call agents, in areas where I don't obviously have the relationships, all I do is, hi, I've been looking at a property on Rightmove. Yeah, is it still available? Give them the address. Yes, it's available. Brilliant. Are you the right person to speak to? They'll say generally yes, because we got through to the lettings team. Brilliant. I don't want to waste anybody's time. Is the property or is the landlord open to company lets? Right, and they'll either say yes or no. If they say no, because I've said, is the landlord open to it? Because if they say no, you've got two options. Say, can I ask why that is? Or, okay, no problem at all. Do you have anything else on your books that you do company lets on? What they will most likely say at that point is, oh, no, we don't do company lets. So it's, okay, the landlord might be open to it, but you're not as the agent. Right, now it's up to you how you proceed from there. You can either dig down a little bit deeper, go, oh, why is that? And try and build that rapport, try and get an understanding, but they will see through that. They'll understand what you're trying to do. So what I tend to do at that point is, okay, no problem. We'll give you a call in a few weeks and just see if there's anything that's come through that would be suitable. Right, and that's as simple as it needs to be. You don't need a massive script. Yes, when they do start, and we will get on to landlords in a minute, but when the agent does start to ask questions, now one of the questions you could get asked is, oops, I don't know why that's just dropped the presentation screens. Bear with me 2 seconds. There we go. So one of the questions you could get asked is how many people are going to be staying in the property, who's going to be staying in the property. Now, all of this comes down to your research, which we went through last week. Okay, the more research of the area you've got, the more understanding of the area you've got, the more convincing, for want of a better word, you are going to be. Okay, and by that I mean you can quite often figure out through extensive research, and I don't mean hours and hours and hours, I mean half an hour on ChatGPT and Google, you can figure out who the major contractors are likely to be, the major industries that you're going to be housing and things like that. So instead of going, oh, we just house contractors, and when they say, oh, who, are they your contractors, are they not? Don't lie, don't say yes, they are your contractors. I've had one person do that before, and yes, it got viewings, but it never got any further than that because they found him out. But so never lie about any of that, but just say, for example, they work in the hospital, but that line again has been used over and over. It's in scripts, it's everywhere. So go a bit deeper, figure out, is there a need for housing for traveling GPs, or is there a need for foreign students? Is it a university hospital, right? All of this sort of stuff that you can be dropping in there. We work with the hospital, and they're foreign students that come over. They come over for 3 months at a time. They need short temporary accommodation. We house those employees, and then we have a changeover period, and then there's a few more traveling students that come in. That gives you a lot more credibility than, we just house the NHS workers. Same with if you're next to, I don't know, if you're in Cumbria, for example, right, and you're next to the BAE where they build the submarines. Figure out who the contractors are going to be. Figure out who the most likely contractors that come to that site are, right, and put that into your pitch, if you like. But give yourself credibility. Give yourself that expertise, that professionalism, without being scripted, without being robotic, without being too bland, right? Just get the key facts, and it's all down to the research. And this is the main reason, I know we went through this last week, but this is the main reason that I'm so I push so hard for you guys to be doing the research stage so extensively, and not relying on property market intel or ADNA, because if you rely on those, all you're going to get is a nightly rate, which is your average. It doesn't tell you weekend or weekday, and your occupancy. Nothing else, absolutely nothing else. Whereas if you do your research, you understand who's there. It might be a tourist-led area. That's fine. Figure out why tourists are coming there. Whatever it may be, get that there, so that when you start dealing with agents and they ask you who's going to be in the property, you can say, we're housing 5 employees from the BAE site. They're here for about 6 months at a time. They're doing this project. I mean, with BAE, you probably won't be able to find out because it's all secretive, isn't it? But you get the idea behind what I'm trying to say there. The other one that you'll get quite often is that they need to know who's in the property. Now, sometimes you can talk agents round on this one. Sometimes it's just a cold hard no. You can explain that, look, we're going to be the contract holder. It's going to be us on the contract with the landlord and with yourselves. We won't be staying in the property, however. But then dive into. Let me just check. It's not on the next slide here. No, it's not. Cool. Then dive into all of the bits. Such as we collect IDs, we take security deposits, we have contracts with our contractors. Okay, all of this gives them reassurance that you're putting the right people in the property. And even go one step further when you're dealing with an agent, and be frank with them and say, look, because they might ask you, are you just going to put it on Airbnb? And that's a whole other topic again. But just be frank with them and just say, look, I don't want party goers. I don't want 1 or 2 night stays. They're too much hard work. They cause aggro for me. I don't want them, right? I prefer the long-term contractor market. However, we would need the flexibility to be able to utilize platforms like Airbnb to attract long-term contractors. However, we manage our diaries effectively. We have calendar management and pricing software to make sure that we are attracting the right type of guests into the property. And as I said before, they're all ID checked, and they're all, the security deposits taken on all of them. Any damages or issues are dealt with by the guest, because we can charge their card automatically. All of this gives that agent reassurance that you're not just somebody else trying to do rent to rent, and you're just going to stick it on Airbnb and hope and just take anybody that comes up and pays you 90 quid for a night, right? You've got to work with these agents. Now, quite often what will happen is you'll get all of this rejection, right? From the previous slide, you'll get all of this. Right, you'll get rejection. They'll want to know who's going to be staying in the property. They'll want to know how long they're going to be there, what their names are. That's one that quite often comes up. You cannot provide that, right? You physically can't. So that just has to be your name on the tenancy. And again, reassure them that you've got contracts and ID and deposits and all the rest of it. But all of that might not lead anywhere. What you then need to do is actually take a trip to your goldmine area. Drive to your area. right? Walk around the estate agents or lettings agents and go into them, right? In Chester here, there's about 10 lettings agents. Now, if you call all 10 of those today, you'll probably only get one or two that would say yes to company lets. Last week or the week before, I took two of my mentees that live local to here. We walked around Chester. We managed to go into, I think, about 7 or 8 of the 10 lettings agents. 7 of them came away, and I'm not even kidding right now because I've still got the business cards in front of me. 7 of them we got business cards from who are open to company lets and open to working with us. And the reason that is because when we went in there, we did not go in there with an agenda. We didn't go in there with a script. We didn't dress all professional, right? We were just in t-shirts and jeans, right? Walking around Chester. And all we did when we went into those lettings agents was introduce ourselves. Hi, I'm Matt. We're doing rounds of the lettings agents in Chester. Just to introduce ourselves, one of the things that we're trying to do is just figure out who would be open to company lets. How about yourselves? Would you be open to working on company lets? And you'd be amazed how many said yes when they previously said no on the phone to my mentees a week or 2 weeks before. Okay, now even to the point where we sat down in front of one lettings agent who my mentee had spoken to a couple of days before about 5 particular properties. And because we were there in person, she said, yeah, they'd be open to it. Before we'd even got home, she'd rung the landlords. Landlords were open to it. And now one of my mentees is in negotiations on the 5 deals. So this is the power of going in person. You know, you completely break down the walls. You break down that persona of, oh, you're just another one of those people, like a fly, swatting them out of your face. You know, it's very much a case of, look, I've made the effort to come in today. You know, we're doing the rounds. We're just introducing ourselves. I've got no agenda. I'm not trying to nail you for a property today. I'm just trying to build that relationship. Be very honest with people because they will like it and it will work and it will work in your favor. Okay. Now, let's jump into the next slide and then we can, let's do this one and then we'll dive back and we will go through landlords because they're a different kettle of fish. You approach those completely different. Okay. Now, know, like, and trust. That's what it's all about. That's what this whole building rapport, you know, whether it's on the phone, in person, whatever it is, that is what you are trying to do. You're trying to get them to know you, trust you, and like you. Okay. It is a people business. As I said, they're not investing, they're not letting the property to your company name, logo, or anything. None of that makes a difference right at the start. Okay. But you need to turn up enough. Okay, some of our mentees are now at the point where when the lettings agent picks up the phone, they know who it's going to be, right? Because they're so persistent with it, they're so consistent. They are just turning up time and time again. And then you get to a point where people will start to bring you deals. They will start to contact you with properties that are potential because you have turned up and you have built that rapport. Right now, yes, be professional, but also build a relationship. You never know where that could go. You know, it could lead on to other business opportunities. It could lead any which way, right? Get to know them. So learn their names. That's a massive one. Okay. When you're dealing with agents, learn their names, call them up. Hey, is Lauren working today? Right. If she's not, if he's not, whoever it may be, either speak to the person there or, okay, when's she back? You know, and call back when she is there. Be that person who is building the relationship with that one individual. Okay, if you can, try and get to the, you know, the lettings manager because you'll have a lot more success with them. If they think you're lying, you will get sussed out. Trust me, they will figure it out and they will not work with you, right? When they don't trust you, they won't, you won't survive. You won't have success within that lettings agent. Okay, you need to build that rapport and relationship with people. Now, all of these fancy bits on the side, I like it. So let's go back a couple here. Okay. Now, common objections. These, as we said, were mainly agents. Okay. Now, when you're dealing direct with landlords, and let me close. No, I'm not going to do that because I don't know how to mess with the system. When you're dealing direct with landlords, it is a different kettle of fish. Okay. They haven't got rules. They haven't got, you know, standard operating procedures like lettings agents and businesses do. Okay. It is an individual. Now, what that landlord wants to know is their property going to be safe? Is it going to be looked after? Are you the right person to do that? Okay, and how does it all work? Right? Is it legally allowed? The most common thing you'll get is it subletting? Well, no, it's not subletting, right? It's not subletting at all. Let me see if I can remove that. There we go. So you need to portray that. You need them to understand that it's not subletting. Okay, it kind of is, but it's legal subletting. One of the other things that landlords really do struggle with is the fact that potentially you might be having parties and issues like that. There's steps that you can take, cameras on the outside of the properties, noise monitoring inside the properties. You can explain to a landlord that these tenants or guests don't have any rights to stay in the property. So if there is ever any issues, they can be evicted there and then, right? Even if it's 2 a.m. in the morning, they can be got rid of. Okay, so again, it comes down to building that relationship, building that rapport with the landlord. They have to know, trust, and like you, whether you're sourcing the deal onto somebody else or whether you're taking it on yourself. It starts with trust and an understanding that you know what you're doing and you are being professional about it. So, as I said, they'll be worried that you're just going to stick it on Airbnb and take any old person. Explain who you work with. Explain, just like you did with the agents, potentially the NHS workers or BAE or whatever it is. Explain that knowledge to the landlord and then help them understand the process. Okay, help them understand how it works. That it's company let policy. Now, there's one thing that's come about or will be coming about quite soon that is helping people get more landlords on board. And that's the fact of the Renters Reform Bill. Okay. Now, landlords are terrified of that. There is a mass exit from the property market on the landlord side of the fence. And that's because it's all biased, let's be honest, towards the tenants. But when you sit down and you explain to a landlord that actually the Renters Reform Bill doesn't apply to company lets because we're never governed by housing law anyway, we're governed by contract law, which means that whatever we put in that contract, we have to abide by. If it's a 6-month break clause, a 12-month break clause, I don't advise 6-month break clause, by the way, but we'll cover those in a later video. But if it's a 12-month break clause, then that's what we abide by. If we don't pay rent for a set number of days, we're evicted immediately. That's what we abide by. There's absolutely no jurisdiction by the Renters Reform Bill or any of that side of the property industry when it comes to company lets. Okay, so they're actually a lot more secure with us than they are with a standard tenant, and that can really help you get through. Okay, but it's all about, with a landlord, taking it down to basics, right? Most landlords are not professional landlords. Okay, even if they've got 2 or 3 properties, they are not professional landlords. So don't try and speak to them like they are. Don't try and use big fancy words and overcomplicate the process. Speak to them in basic terms like you would somebody down the pub or down the gym or wherever it may be, right? If you had to sit down and explain what you want to do to a 5-year-old kid, right? They always say that, don't they? Try and explain it to a kid, right? Imagine you're doing that with a landlord. That's all you're doing. Look, we're going to come in, we're going to legally rent your property as a company, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to generally renovate your property. We'll come in and paint and decorate. We'll furnish it to a very high standard, and then we will house contractors. But then there will be the odd occasion where we might have a couple of weeks where we haven't got contractors, so we will put it on platforms like Airbnb and Booking.com, but we'll restrict who comes into the property, and we'll make sure that they're there for the right reasons. We take ID, we take deposits, blah, 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 blah. You can see where I'm going with that, right? It's very much just conversational, okay? And they can understand that. Then they'll want to know, okay, who covers the maintenance? This one, you need to be very, very clear with landlords from the offset who covers maintenance. And the basic way of understanding this is, look, if there's any damage to the property that's caused by guests or us, then that is down to us to rectify. If there's any structural problems, any issues with the property, roof, windows blowing, boilers going down, anything like that, then that is still the landlord's responsibility, because technically a lot of that is covered under your insurance policy, right? And explain it to them that way. Yes, we cover general maintenance. Like if a handle comes off a door, okay, and it's not a guest related issue, it's just naturally, worked its way loose and it's come off the door. I'm not going to call the landlord to fix that. We're going to do that ourselves, right? Same with a leaky tap. The time it takes to get in touch with the landlord, them to authorize it, all the rest of it, no, we're just going to deal with that. And that's, again, something you can be saying to your landlords. This is how we operate. It becomes much more of a conversation. Now, the other objections that your landlords will have, so it'll be, we don't want it on Airbnb, we don't want party goers, we don't want people trashing the place, we don't want our neighbors to have any issues, right? All of these, the simplest answer to all of these points is neither do I, because that makes my life hard. Okay, I actually want long-term people in here, right? But we do it on a service accommodation basis for people that are staying away from home, and we create a home away from home. Another key phrase that you can drop in there is, look, we need to keep this property at showroom condition, and that's not a brag. That's not me saying, oh, look at me, I keep it at show home. Like, yay. We have to, because we have to run a business. In order to guarantee your rent, we have to make sure that we are consistently booked. To make sure we're consistently booked, we have to maintain the property and keep it to a very, very high standard. We also have cleaners in the property regularly, so we've got eyes and ears on the property. We can see what's happening, we can see how it's happening and what's going wrong, and we can deal with any issues as and when they happen. And drop in little quotes. Unlike, you get a standard tenant in there and they dry their clothes in the front living room, and you end up with mold all over the walls, and you don't find out for 3 or 4 months until your next inspection, right? Drop all of this in there because it's reassuring that you're professional, you know what you're doing, and you know how to operate. Okay, all of this is building that rapport, building that relationship. And then it comes down to figuring out, what does the landlord actually want? And ask them, what is it that you want out of the property? Is it long term? Is it, the highest amount that you can get? Is it less hassle? Is there too much maintenance going on? Is your current management company saying that they're managing the property for you, but they're still calling you every day? All of these questions, you need to be identifying what the problem is. At that point, when you know what the problem is, you can go back to the excuse me. You can go back and say, do you know what? Completely understand your issue there, right? So this is how we can solve that problem. Too many people we see, just like you do with the calling the agents, then they're using scripts and things like that. Too many people go in with, well, we can offer you guaranteed rent for the next 5 years, void free, and we deal with all the maintenance. One, it's too vague, and two, that might not even be solving a problem the landlord's got. It might not be that they want a long-term tenant. They might have had somebody in there for the past 5 years, a family living there for the past 5 years that's never caused them any issues. That solution is not that solution is not a solution to a problem they've got, right? So you need to identify what it is. You might find that there isn't a pain point. At that point, you've got to work on it, not work on building a pain point, but work the relationship, understand what it is. We did one quite recently, not far from here. It was a 5-bedroom HMO, and we were working with the landlord, and I did the initial viewing, went round, said, look, this is the price range that we're going to be at. How does that sit with you? And he was very, yeah, I like that. Yeah, no problem at all. A few days later, I was like, right, let's get the contract sorted. Let's get this ball moving. Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know about it. I was like, okay, what's the issue? And he kind of fluffed around a little bit. Oh, I don't know. I'm just not sure. Is it subletting? Is it allowed? All of these questions kept coming up, and I was answering them. And then we actually found what the problem was, and the offer was not enough, right? So I simply put to him, I said, okay, what do you want out of it? And he gave a figure, and I said, look, we're not going to get there, but let's go halfway in the middle. Instantly, yeah, okay, let's do it. Deal done. So we listened to them, we questioned them, and we asked them, what do you want? And then we proposed our offer, right? All too often we see people just going in with an offer blind. Landlord doesn't really understand it. As I said at the start, it's your job to educate these people, right, as to how it operates, how it works. The first time that these people see a company let agreement, it'll probably blow their mind. So talk them through it, right? Talk them through what a break clause is. Talk them through what the maintenance policy is. right? All of the clauses that are in there, spend some time and talk it through them. Say, look, I'm happy to jump on a Zoom or come and grab a coffee and we can talk through the contract. Don't just fly a contract at these people. Because they'll see it, they'll see 6-7 pages of legal jargon that isn't laid out like any AST they've ever seen, and they'll go, oh my god, I don't know what to do. So any questions on that before we move on? I realize I've literally haven't come up for air for about 35 minutes. No questions? Well, on Zoom anyway. Okay, so we've done that slide. So reassure them. So as I said, people, agents, landlords, they all want to know that their property is safe. Okay, so they need to know that they're legally protected. So make sure you're using a good contract. Trust me, there are a lot of contracts that just get handed around the rent-to-rent community from one person. Oh, have you got a contract yet? No worries. And they get emailed it, and it is absolutely terrible. So make sure you are using the right contract, and make sure the clauses in there protect you as much as they protect the landlord. Okay. Hands-on management teams. This is one of the other things that you can explain to your landlords, is that, because you need to keep it in showroom condition, because you have an online presence with these properties, you have to have teams in place. So it's not simply a case of we're a tenant and we're going to call you to get a random plumber out to fix something. We already have them in place. We have the relationships, we have the tradespeople in place to be able to deal with any issues most of the time on the same day. Okay. Explain how you do ID checks, deposits for every guest. Demonstrate your market knowledge, which is what I said about, BAE or hospitals or, paper mills or whatever it may be, factories. Explain that your knowledge on this is extremely high, and that will put you as the professional without having to use loads of, jargon and complicated words that they won't understand. Okay. But then you can also explain about, cameras, noise monitoring, all of the whole process. And the one thing I can say to all of you is be as open and honest with landlords as physically possible, right? The more open you are, the more they will see that your knowledge is there, as long as the knowledge is there, that is. And the more likely you are to get the landlord on board or to get the agent on board. If you just try and be very, very quick, this is the offer we can give, this is the terms, blah, 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 it's not likely to work. Whereas if you've got the whole package going on, right, so they can see absolutely everything, they can see that you understand what you're doing, then they will, you're more likely to secure the deal. So make sure that you've demonstrated that knowledge. Okay, so we've got a little question and answer section here. Let me just check the other platforms, see if anything's come through. None on there. Cool, that's fine. We'll leave that open for a few minutes. But I'll run through this really, really quickly for everybody watching. So off the back of all of these calls, every week we offer out a free 20-minute session. So you'll understand this is a free 20-minute one-to-one session with me to help you understand your market in your local area, see how we can potentially help. I promise you it's not a sales pitch. It's genuinely us trying to help. We'll help you learn proven strategies, create your escape plan. At the moment, rules, regs, and council taxes and all of that is changing. So please, we're there to help. We're there to guide you. It is limited to 20 minutes. I can't be on the phone for the entire day helping you through this. But that is there. So on Zoom at the moment, there is the links to the 20-minute call and to the next session as well. But the 20-minute call link is there. There's also our school classroom. So if you're not on our school platform, please come and join us. There's loads of free resource, how to analyze an area, how to analyze a deal. That's all on our school. So the links are here. What I will do is I will drop these links under this video on whether it be Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it may be. We will drop them in there for you to see afterwards. somebody's note taker is about to end. So that's that one. Next week, we've got securing the deal, so negotiations and the contract stage. So we will dive more and more and more into the contract stage. Wow, that is bouncing around the screen like crazy. So just to recap then, because we've bounced around quite a lot this evening, the biggest issues you're going to come across, okay, is that landlords and agents don't know what it is. They don't understand how it benefits them, and they think you're going to have parties and you're not going to look after the property. That is the main thing that these people will be struggling with. So it is your job to educate them, show your market knowledge, show your understanding, and to really push to work with these people, build the relationships. One of the other things we always say is, look, go to viewings with properties that potentially you're not looking to take on when it's direct to landlord, because you'd be amazed how many landlords do have multiple properties, or have somebody else that they know has a property, or has a brother that's got 2 other properties. That happened to me last week, right? I rang somebody who got my details about a HMO. I rang him up. I said, look, can we get a viewing? We're going on the viewing next week. And whilst I was on the phone, he said, oh, it's a lucky day. My brother's got 2 HMOs that are just around the corner. Do you want to have a look at them at the same time? Absolutely, I do. That's 3 HMOs that we could potentially onboard next week. They're all recently refurbished. They're all furnished properties. They cost next to nothing to take on. So you never know where these conversations can go, but also play the long game, right? Rent to rent is all about quick cash flow. Yes, but play the long game, because a letter you send today, and my mentees have proved this in the past couple of weeks. They sent a letter probably about 6 to 12 months ago, and they got a phone call about it last week. They viewed the property on the same day that they got the phone call, and they put an offer forward, and now they're potentially taking the deal on. Okay, so that was a letter they sent nearly 12 months ago, right? With agents, build that relationship, right? They might not have something today, but in 3 months' time, they might have a property for you to take on. If you're not in a position to take it on, source the property on. Right? Same with landlords. Build the long game, right? Always leave them thinking, God, that guy was really nice. I really liked him. You're not a pushy salesman. You're not coming in all scripted and you don't have an agenda. You'll just go in to have a conversation with somebody, explain what you do, explain how you do it. And then if there's a deal that could be done, brilliant. If there's not, absolutely fine. No problem. Have a good day. If you know anybody else that would be interested, please do let me know. Pass my details over. Simple as that. So make sure you are not being scripted. You're not being over the top. You are just building relationships. Sorry, I keep hitting the microphone. I hope that makes sense. If there's any questions after this, please do reach out. Let us know. But for now, I think we've just about hit our 45-minute timer. So we shall leave it there. Remember, next week's securing the deal, negotiations, and contracts. So this is once you've built that rapport with the landlord and you've managed to get the deal, or with the agent, you've got the deal. Moving forwards from there. I've just realised, those watching on Instagram and Facebook, I didn't turn the screen share back on. I apologise. Have a great evening, everybody, and we will catch you soon. Reach out on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you want to find me if you need any help, guidance, if you want to think about mentorship, or any questions you've got around rent to rent, please reach out. Have a good evening. Take care, everyone.